Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining episode 2 of John Hadfield's, what do we call this, masterclass across 3 different episodes. So last time we actually covered off people, which I see we've a lot of people have re-registered again for the second round, which is great. So thank you very much for that. We had a lot of awesome feedback from our first webinar, thanks to John. So he covered off a lot of great topics which seem to really resonate with our customers in our industry. So that was really cool to see. Today is one that he's really excited about. He tells me, embracing technology. So and the process around that. So I'm really excited to see what he's got planned for today. So John, if you're there, mate, you can pop up now and introduce yourself.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. There you go.
Okay. Let's start. Thank you for the introduction. A lot of people, New Zealand's sort of my second home. I've been over there 37 times, I believe, and attended many a conference and many of the ski fields, which I'm quite passionate about. And yes, I do embrace technology and always keep up to date on new skis as well. But the subject of embracing technology is very near and dear to my heart. So without any further ado, if Conan can flick through to the first screen. Okay, I have a bit of a favourite methodology of starting things where there's any questions, and I like to explore what the dictionary says about terms, and in particular, this suits us to a T. Technology are the skills, techniques, methods and processes used in the production of goods and services. That's straight out of a dictionary. And it's also the knowledge that sits in behind equipment or machines to allow them to operate. So it's very apt that technology, as we perceive it, is a modern day phenomena. But I'm about to try and prove to you that it's further than that. Systems of applying technology by taking input or changing processes according to the system's definitions. That could be software, for example, or it could be the way that you look at your colour gamut in some of the digital printing, or even in particular how you choose to mix paint. You may have little additives that you put in paint. That's still a technology change. The earliest form of technology that they record dates back to Neolithic times, and I'm pretty sure I don't have anybody in the audience of that age, although I'm probably getting close to it myself. One of the momentous occasions was the printing press, Gutenberg's printing press. If you have a look at any data on major shifts in technology and world changes, it was because of massive ability for us to communicate, which at the end of the day is, I believe, what we do as an industry. We communicate our client's message to their customers. So, embracing it. My question is, do you? So the verb for embracing, it's holding closely in one's arm as a sign of affections. I would say, I love making signs. To accept willingly as a constitute part is another statement that is true of embracing. So I'd probably use it like saying, I love making all types of signs. Okay, I'm being silly, I accept that. But what I'm hoping to probe and quest with you today is, do you really embrace it or do you just tolerate it? So, and most of the toleration or the ability to accept it and not have an affront with what we have seen in years, and the pivotal point was probably Gerber's 4B, where it created this huge rift in the industry of traditional techniques versus new techniques. But if you look at that over the change, you could go back to even something like paint, when the original sign guys used to have to mix their own pigments with varnish and terabene and oil and all of the other substrates to make a paint. That's still a technology change. And that's what I want to make you aware about in the months and years ahead of some of the challenges that you're going to have to face. Most of it is the perception of change. The threat may be real or large, for resistance to occur. But by the same token, as I say here, it may not be real or large. May not even be there. It may be just the way that you perceive it.
So John, can I ask a question on that?
Absolutely.
So obviously you were meant to present these episodes to us live in person at our NZSDA conference this year, which didn't go ahead for obvious reasons. Thanks,
It was a
COVID, very
change
much.
in technology, I believe.
And that's it. So it's how have you found the change in without being there in front of people and customers and whatnot to deliver your message versus now doing it over a video?
Man, that's putting me on the spot. Like I would probably suggest the easiest way to start saying it is our business is probably down maybe 35 or 40%.
Right.
Our offices in the city have in at Pyrmont, right behind Darling Harbour, so most Kiwis would know pretty well. Has been vacant since this all started.
Yep.
Fortunately, I'm in a position to do that, but it's actually made me reflect on a different methodology of engaging. The word Zoom has come into our vocabulary, so we do a fair few Zoom meetings. I have always written articles, and the articles are a key part of our business. I shared with you earlier, Steve, about one that I'll refer to later on. That it's funny that nothing new is, or nothing old is new again, or vice versa. You know, you soon find out from your own archives. But the common denominator, I think, in any of our businesses is not so much the technology of understanding how we make things or how we deliver it, but rather the real fact is the relationship that we drive with the customers and how much trust and how much value they get out of the relationship, as you would. And if you can keep that to a high level, I've probably phone called people more in the last 6 months than I have ever before. I don't get in the car without having a list, and you know it's against the law to not use a hands-free device in Australia. The fines are fairly heavy, which they should be. But I make a little list. I use Siri to make my phone calls, so yeah, I've had to adapt. But the adaptations that I have done, I think, have all a great value. And to be honest, at my age, I'm happy to work a little bit less. I love work, and that's why I work. And the fact that I don't have to work, I've probably crossed a few people off my list that we don't have the same viewpoints. But by the same token, it's been interesting to see how you reflect differently on it. And that's what I'm talking about. I think the technology is all about us looking at what we're doing and how we do it. So in all honesty, Steve, that's a great question.
Well, you obviously sprung to mind with when we started investigating doing this with you, is that, you know, you're the classic example. What you're preaching us today is that you are genuinely living it, because you be in front of people and seeing their reactions and interacting, and it's always a lot harder over this kind of format. But what we've seen so far this year is that it still works pretty well. But on that, for those that have joined us, you know, you please feel free to ask any questions. There's a little button down the bottom, Q&A. You'll see if you just type it in there, and I'll make sure all your questions are answered with John as we go through.
Yeah. I mentioned, and I'm not trying to, you know, give myself a pat on the back, but for those who don't know, I'm doing these because I was asked to come to New Zealand, because I have a great affiliation with many Kiwis and have done since the 80s. That ability to communicate with each other and hold each other in great pride, that the relationship is of great value, also builds the tapestry of your own life and your own knowledge in work, you know. So the fact that I'm doing it for free, it could be seen, well, what am I doing it for? Well, I'm actually doing it because I enjoy doing it. So what better is the use of my time in this case to talk about something that I truly believe in, that I know has worked for me and many of my colleagues. Why not share it? Because my philosophy in business has always been, all ships rise on a rising tide. As I mentioned to you, Steve, you know, I've known Noel and Jenny for years through the conferences, you know, back from his small sign shop days. You know, we still, when he was in Sydney a couple of years ago, him and Jenny and me, my wife Julie, caught up for dinner. So it's the building of that relationship and trust and enjoyment of what you do. As Confucius said, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Some days aren't as enjoyable as others. Okay, so I'll go on with this slide. I really struggled with why people didn't want to accept the first massive technology change and the vinyl cutter, whereas others seem to do it with just sublime ease. In fact, I and a colleague of mine went overseas to have a look at not the Gerber machine, because I wasn't a fan of it because it was solid state. And I came up with a little analogy about the caveman. You know, what would he have done? So we have a suitable photo there of some cavemen using lights to And I assume they would have used a piece of stick and chewed the end of it to make a form of brush. And then what was the next technology to change it? And that's in the next slide. So I imagine some young cave person with a baseball hat on sideways walked into the same cave, picked up some ochre off the ground, the same as the previous guy did, and chewed it up in his mouth and spat it into a paint pot or a piece of rock and dabbed it with his brush versus stick. The other guy has obviously put it in his mouth and therefore created the difference between analog, the brush, and aerosol, using a spitting motion to put it onto his hand. And we sit back in great wonder and look at these, you know, some of them in Australia are, you know, 20, 30,000 years old or more. And it wasn't just one, the male dominant area or female dominant, everybody was involved. This one in particular, and you can, I believe, see by the hands, this is actually a whole cave of ladies who used the same change in technology to pursue their interest. So where does that all lead us to? Well, some people resisted change, and that's probably enough said. We all know who they are, and you know, I don't in any way, shape or form belittle them for that resistance to change. If they want to do that, that's their choice. But by the same token, it's a good opportunity. I think you learn as much from people who resist change as you do that are leaders in change. So here's a happy little caveman and his wife embracing change in all its wonderful forms and embracing new technologies that they've found. So what's it all mean to us? So, and I want to create that benchmark that a lot of people in the industry worldwide still have a relevance to being a sign writer, and people who aren't sign writers who come in from a different industry, I've noticed a distinct difference in their ability to manage their businesses because they treat themselves more as a person in business that makes signs. I don't see that as a disadvantage, nor do I see being a sign writer, of which I'm one, as a disadvantage. I just say, yeah, people who want to look at the best options have the widest view of different technologies. So I'm a sign writer, so I just like sign writing. I'm actually really good with that. I'm a sign maker. I use any tools to make signs, and I'm good with that too. But I'm also, next slide, please. Both of those, but at the same time, I'm actually, well, I signed my business many years ago. I always trained our people that we were in the business of making signs, and that our challenge was to accept the details from a client and take their image or logo or branding or corporate manual or whatever and develop a unique marketing product, which could have been the side of a building, the side of a bus, a motor vehicle, a monolith sign out the front of the building, whatever it was. It didn't matter to me whether it was paint or concrete. What we were after was to create some sort of image or product that clients would remember. And if it was a sign, we wanted it to be a landmark. So I'm also good with that one. So I think it's a matter of perspective. So in the creation of my work and what we've done, we always embraced, whether it was routers or lasers or a bloody chisel or spray guns or design software, quoting and scheduling programs. It's all technology that one can embrace. I'm just trying to encourage people to keep their mind open about how they do it, how they use it, and to of course avoid the pitfalls. So I say, bring it on. I don't care what computer letter are going to sell me, as long as I can buy it next year and it's a reliable brand, which you guys have got a great history of that. And whether it's some of the other very valid suppliers right throughout New Zealand and Australia, it's really about how we honestly treat our business with a long-term vision. So if we look at some of the options that we've got, digital print, if you actually go back and look at the numbers of this, over the last decades, we've seen rates of change that look around 3,000% multiples from the starting point, which included a wide and small format. In small format, like smaller printing, because there's a convergence thing happening at the same time, it's many, many times more, as we'll prove in the next couple of slides. So if we looked at sign writing, when vinyl cutters first came out, we did a test here and it became quite universal. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, 35 characters, one of every letter and a couple in multiple times. And it used to take a good quality sign writer in 50 millimetres Helvetica about an hour and a half to do. So you could convert that to about 1 square metre of lettering. When vinyl letters first came out, the Gerber did it in 7 minutes and 42 seconds, and the CSR, which was the other major machine at the time, did it in about 12 minutes. So you're looking at such a phenomenal increase or decrease in time from 1.5 hours down to 10 minutes. And then since then, the percentage increase is something like 900%. So if you look at vinyl to digital, the rate of change is even more. So I remember standing there in wonder looking at a digital print of a square metre, and it'd take, you know, an hour or more to print 1 square metre, and sometimes in draft mode, depending on the machines. And it was water-based ink that you couldn't use outside. So now we're talking, many of the machines have got capacities of 80 square metres an hour, and that's pretty well mid-range. So you're looking at some of the higher output machines, and their ink goes down from maybe $6 or $7 a square metre down to under $1 a square metre UV, and fairly reasonable lifespan outside. So easy to say an 800% increase there on top of the 3,000. Oh, this slide's gone a bit haywire in its trip to New Zealand, so excuse the questions. Which area can deliver you the most amount of growth? I suggest that many businesses, their models are under threat. I'm not saying you're going to be wiped out like the dinosaurs, but I am saying you've got a couple of choices. And if you divide it into the two extremes, don't waste time complaining, just do something. And it doesn't matter how small a technology change in your area could be. It could be the placement of your major piece of equipment in your workshop. That could be it. Could be redoing the layout. That's a change of technology. Could be looking at the floor plan, and nothing of I've just mentioned plugs into a wall. It's just all thought processes of us actually having a look at where we can use better technology to achieve the same thing. So I guess the dinosaurs will could have complained as well. They didn't have a lot of control over their changes because of what they assume are meteors and comets hitting the world that we live in. But if you're ready to find new markets and develop new customers in a brave new world, you've got so many options nowadays. As you mentioned, most of my contact is me talking or helping people or working out in their premises. I did some recruitment for a company the other day. And in that recruitment, the first thing we were doing is selling the fact that we wanted someone to move to an area 3 hours away from the coast. And that's really unusual in Australia, because people are very, very coastal, whereas you've got some major central towns like Hamilton in the centre of the area. Whereas to talk someone to move from being a coastal dweller to being 3 hours from the sea is a big deal. So the first thing we went to was looked at the universities in the town, looked at the schools, looked at the house prices, and that was a part of the package we were offering the candidate. So that's a change of technology, mainly because none of the previous ads that he'd run for the last 3 years had even got past the first interview. We found the right candidates, but there was no sell. And nowadays with COVID again and a switch in technology, people are looking, I want to get the hell out of Sydney because it's got a, as we call it affectionately now, a hotspot in a certain suburb. We've got to embrace what that is happening and leverage it to our best model that we can. I'd mentioned this second, I'd just go back one slide, if you wouldn't mind, Canon, thank you. That was me. If your business model is proven and well tested, I asked this question, will my methods work in 2025? That's only 5 years away. I told Steve before the slide, some of the freebies that I offer at the end of it, 2 articles, one that I wrote, and I posed exactly the same question, will your methods work in 2020? And it was like, for those who are followers of The Twilight Zone and those sort of shows, it was one of those do-do moments. And I thought, man, everything that's old, new again at the end of the day. But it is. It's reinventing ourselves all the time. Thanks, Kane. So if you're up for a challenge, let's look at a few. Additive or 3D printing. I don't know how much of an impact that it's making in New Zealand yet, but I was at a sign shop. He's an ex-apprentice of mine, and he runs a big shop. He does about 7 or 8 million a year. That's a reasonable size shop in Australia. And they put in a 3D printer about a year ago. They needed some plastic brackets to put up as a part of a kit because they were being sent to different installers around the country. And they developed a little 3D plastic clip, and they printed them on a 3D printer. They walked out one morning, the next morning they were all in there. I think they paid about 10 grand for a 3D printer. The next phase that we're starting to see, and you'll see it in the next slide, but I wanted you to have the URL, is, and I'm guessing there's already a couple of these in New Zealand, there's several here in Australia, and that'll be a population basis, but Coleman Group, who was started in 46, straight after the war, and very traditional long-term sign guys, but embraced technology like crazy, you know, in the early parts of the 80s, 84, 85, when vinyl cutters come out. They've just put one of these in at around $1 million Aussie dollars. And the speed of change just within this technology, or what they call additive printing. But when you look at this further and what 3D printing, I had another PowerPoint that I did where it was called Trends of the Future, and it spoke about a lot of these things, but in more detail. And you know, there's people that are actually making door frames or making sternums out of titanium to replace your rib cage and stuff like this. It's just mind blowing. And at my age and skiing as much as I have, the price I pay is bad hips. And I was told by a doctor the other day, wait another 6 months because there's a new breakthrough is coming through there where they do a full scan and then actually make the replacement based on what the original hip part was. The technology's been around for that for some time, but they haven't perfected it as well as they could do. So when you're talking about, you know, they're expecting, not expecting, they know these changes. Look at what's happening with the drugs that they're trying to produce for the virus. Like if they want to swing in action and there's a return on investment, it'll certainly happen. So where are some other opportunities? Soft signage been around for many years, but there's some great advantages in the fact that it can be a small bundle package, that it, instead of say shipping a very large sign, you can ship a few aluminium extrusions and a roll of material around those extrusions, and they put together the kit. To give you an idea how soft signage is impacted, I mentioned Coleman's before, and I'm sure Glenn wouldn't mind sharing it, but they send several $1 million a year worth of aluminium extrusion for soft signage to the US. I've worked in the US for 3 years, and you know, although they are certainly trendsetters, it's the development of that process where someone fine tunes it to from a first generation product to second or third generation product where you really get the advantages. Digital advertising. We're seeing all over Sydney and around Australia, small, low cost packages that the shopkeeper can run online or offline and run their menu boards. So digital screen advertising, and the fact that there's now wireless, which will work very, very well rather than hardwired, which is one of the major technology breaches that they had to overcome. There's a mile of emerging digital printed trends like the decor marketplace, wallpaper and those sort of things, soft fabrics that are worthwhile exploring. You've already got the technology, you certainly have the design skills in this area. It's just a matter of awakening for things to do. So using the digital printer, Ross Hall would be a good example in Auckland with his coffins that I think he still makes them. I think it's Dying Art was a great use of the digital printer to be able to have a more sustainable way of low cost burying people and have a bit of personality on the coffin. Worthwhile newsletter to sign up and follow. More opportunities are things like software to save time. This area is enormously underutilised worldwide. We started a business back in 2003, software. The business is still going. My son owns it and runs it now entirely. But if you can save time on quoting and time management and the whole gamut of what you do, if you're not leveraging that area, because once you've done it once, there's a great phrase that I live by, and that's single outlay, multiple return. So in other words, if you make one sign, go and visit one shop and make one sign for one client, that's single outlay, single return. If you make that same sign for a whole franchise of shops, that's a great example of single outlay, multiple return. And software is a good example of it. But so are things like safety signs and other, the COVID signs are a good example. You make one and then you can sell them and market them, but you've got to shift your relationship from being, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but you've got to look at things. I'm not just a sign maker. I actually have a company that is in business making signs, so therefore I need the responsibilities of marketing the product and getting involved in the next key point is digital marketing. And if you're not into social media, you need to understand what your likely fate will be. And it's probably either you've got a very, very niche market, and I support that and absolutely cherish it. And some zone businesses, if they're in a particularly unique place, like Queenstown. I met the guys from Queenstown Sign some years ago at a conference, and they're one of the, we've got a sign shop down in the snowfields here, and similar, it's got a real certain style about it. You see it a lot in America and in areas of America like the southwest area, like Arizona, there's a particular type of signage, or up in the north around New Hampshire, New England, a certain sort of sign prevails, of what I'd call a high artistry sign. And they're not as prone to the mass manufacturing. So in other words, digital marketing, if you're applying to the masses, means a lot. But if you're in a niche market, you can, I wouldn't say relax a little bit, but you've got to make sure that the way that you go about doing things pertains to that marketplace. So, and I'm not trying to bang the drum about this, but compliance in every shape or form is a necessary part. If you're not delivering compliance, you'll miss out on contracts. You need to become a part of the solution. It has to be seen clearly as mandatory. Occupational health and safety systems aren't a burden, they're the law. After, and not something I'm proud of, but after 26 or 7 years in business, we had a guy remove a safety guard off a 3-metre metal guillotine, used to cut through 3mm plate steel. He removed the safety guard off it, and then his fingers slipped under the blade and cut the top of his thumb and 2 fingers off. Our insurance, he was paid out under the Australian law. It's a fairly easy process for them. He had both of the other 2 fingers sewn back on, but our insurance went from 28,000 to 38 in 1 year. And we didn't get a judgment against us because the judge said that everything we were doing for right. But the law says that you have to ensure safety in the workplace. And because I should have had bolts on there that needed special security nuts or whatever, so he couldn't remove them. So everything that I'd done for the previous 10 years paid off, because the fine could have been $250,000, $300,000 in Australia. There was no fine awarded. I just had to pay court costs, which are $1,000. But that certainly broke mine and my wife's spirit about employing 25 to 30 people. And we reflected on things differently and decided that a change of technology was apt for us. So we sold the company and sold our patents that we owned in the sign industry and moved into a different area. So, but OH&S and the like is mandatory. Convergence, and you've probably heard this term a lot, and it's a term I really, really like, but it's also probably the biggest threat. In Australia, I see the largest threat taking place within printers who, in the sign game, you can sort of start anywhere. You know, you can do the design first or last. You can prepare the panel first or last. You can sort of do you can pretty well slot it in the way you want to do it. Whereas in a lot of industries, it's very procedural driven. Screen printing would be one of them. You need the artwork, you need the positive, you need to prepare the screen, you need to set the job up, you need to cut the stock, and then you can finally pour the ink in to do the final part of the job. Whereas convergence, when you're talking digital, removes a whole lot of the obstacles that people have as their, and I'll use the term trade skill in a very finite and positive manner. The technology often debunks all of the skills that we learn in college and from our forebears, and it changes and revolutionises things. 18 months ago, I was in Chicago at the second largest print and packaging exhibition, and the largest one is in Brussels every year. The same English company runs the one in Chicago, and they're showing over there machines that will actually do massive machines that used to take up half a plant, you know, tens of square meters, The machine now is probably 10 square metres or 5 square metres in size that may, and I mean this respectfully, only cost maybe 100 grand or 115 grand, that are designed for in-plant printing. So they'll print a bottle, they'll print a cardboard box, they'll print anything you want, and the setup rates that they're talking about is 1,000 to 2,000 units. So ideal for boutique breweries, or the Kiwis are really good at high quality wine manufacture. So you'll see the shift of convergence going maybe back to the manufacturers themselves and having equipment in their own plant. That's certainly a threat to us in the sign game. We're seeing a lot more shops, big retailers have their own sign shops, but packaging is one of the biggest marketplaces worldwide that in many cases, standard equipment that you've got now could be doing short run packaging, and there's still a great amount of space. The smaller part of their industry is bigger than their whole industry in combined. Review what old products can be revitalised. What used to take many, many hours to do, with a reinvention of that same process, you could revitalise another product. Household products like fabric and wallpaper, fairly well done and managed, but there is, with the new raised printing and 3D printing like braille printing, we're seeing a lot of changes in that area. Print on demand, online application. It's gone are the days when you spend $50,000 or $60,000 on a website to do this. A lot of these on-demand websites can be packaged and run in conjunction with the software that you're using in your business. Short-run fabrication, like via 3D print, like those brackets that I mentioned to you for that safety sign, they were sent out as a part of the kit. And it comes back down to when the client receives the products, they need to be, it's the old story, an old line, they need to be promised something, and then you need to over deliver. And it's not difficult to do it. We just need to look better at what we would like as a customer, how we would go about receiving things. In the time we have, and we must be getting close to our end time, I could talk on this all day, because it's just a matter of walking through any part of your workshop, and you could start by having a look at the vehicles parked out the front of your building, how your staff greet it, all of those. Do you wear uniforms? Is your showroom up to par? When you walk through, do you have a window out into the workshop, or is your office upstairs and you peer down into the place? All of those, in my view, are technology change of how you interact and embrace the changes that you need to do. But the one key, as we mentioned in the beginning, you need a clear vision about it, and you need to become a logistics partner with your customer. We for many years used to answer the phone at our place, yes, we can. We didn't say hello, we just said, yes, we can, and then hello. And that sort of branding, where you become the end of their search, if they think of you first, the confidence that they can place in you, and price doesn't become the forebear of all the decisions. And I have a little picture in my head of a triangle, that if you put price at the top, you can always manufacture the other 2 points of the corner, which is quality and service. But if you invert that circle and put price at that's triangle, I should say, sorry, you put the triangle, the price at the bottom, it's almost impossible to balance an upside down triangle. So I'm trying to say that price is a big part of the marketplace, but it's another whole area that we could talk to in another webinar session. But the price becomes irrelevant when you become a logistics partner with a customer, because they trust, they know, and their goods will be delivered on time. So to support what I'm saying, there's 2 articles that I wrote a little while ago, Disruptive Technology, which talks about the same thing, like what is a disruptive technology? It's a 2 or 3 page article. And then another one, which I think runs for 4 pages, and it's all about trends in production markets, and it talks about digital printing and that sort of stuff. So I've supplied those to the association for free distribution. They're from, I regularly, every month or every 2 months, I write a magazine. And the last one I want to probe for you, which is available as a Word document as well, is the next slide, which is, it's a worksheet. And I'm sorry it goes 11 pages, but, and as you can see by the second page, how can your management style increase the changing technology and compliance? So what I'm just asking you a question. Change the questions if you want to, but rate yourself. So that the 1 to 10, you know, you need to actually give yourself a score. Treat it as a staff activity. And even if it's just you and your significant other, or a small team of 3 to 5 people, or a large organisation with 20 or 30 or 40 people, you could even break divisions of it up. The parts in this include a part of 2 weeks ago, we did the people first and foremost, and I've made part 1 about assessing people, and it runs through to part 4. So it covers a fairly wide gamut. Even if you set a task that you do one of the sections a week or one section a month, it's just the tool to actually to put you down, sitting in a table somewhere, or, you know, maybe down by the beach with a pina colada or something, and actually relax and actually ask yourself some probing questions about your business. How can you change technology that will enhance your business into the future? I think that's the last slide. Thanks for watching. Steve.
Great. Oh, look, thank you very much, John. That was, very, very insightful. So I think I get what you're saying is also a lot of people spend a lot of time working in the business and not on the business.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think that what you're getting through from our first session into this one, it's all starting to really tie together. So those that haven't seen John's first episode, that's up on our website and on the NZSDA's website, so you can go and revisit that. I think it's half an hour, 40 minutes long, and is all around people first and foremost, which was a great session. And we've got our third and final coming up on the 17th of September, which is around adding value. I don't know if you can just give everyone a quick brief on what to expect for that.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Adding value was one of my favourite ones, and I learned in the early 90s that if I treated I had a consultant in, and he probed the question. He interviewed our staff, he interviewed our management, he interviewed our customers, which was a trip on its own, and we sort of found out more about who we were in that brief 2 months of investigation, and we learned to treat our business like it was its own legal entity, no matter how big it was. At the time, we had about 25 staff. But what I do is try and explore that if you treat your business like it's a corporation, or by adding value in it that others would perceive, when it comes to sell the business, or worse, you might be in a situation where ill health or some other circumstance that you can't control will change your lifestyle. If the value is built, you're actually respecting your employees, you're actually respecting your staff and your suppliers, which is that triangle of suppliers, sign companies and customers, like the triangle of quality, service and price, that if you can build value into your business. So I talk about what you've got to look for, systems. It's sort of not too far away from technology, because if you buy good technology, it adds value, but if you buy bad technology, it's like an anchor around your neck. So, and I've got a checklist of things that people can do to actually enhance the value of their business, to treat the business like you're an employee, not your own personal fiefdom, which a lot of people who make signs, we're creatives, we're professionals, we like to think it's our own space, but at the same time, when you go to sell it, you'll be shocked at many of the great businesses that have sold, and they sell, you'd think they'd sell for millions of dollars, but they sell for, maybe a couple of $100,000. And it's because the owners have never really reflected on what the business should be worth. So I'm not saying I'm setting your business up for sale. I'm saying that if you treat it like it's set up for sale, you have a different viewpoint. You become more a management style where you treat the business like it can grow, and it can become autonomous in its own realm from
okay, great.
good quality management guidelines.
Oh, that sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to that one. All right.
Thanks,
well,
Steve.
we'll wrap it up there. So if anyone has any questions or anything we can send through to John over the next couple of weeks, feel free to email myself or Melissa at the NZSDA, and we can absolutely pass those on. But yeah, just want to thank you again, John. Thanks, Melissa, Andy, and the team at the NZSDA for helping us put all this together. And look, 17th of September, same time, same place. Bring a coffee, and we'll figure out how not to sell our business, but how to add value and make it look all green.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Thank you for attending all, and thanks very much for being the MC, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
mate.
Melissa,
Thanks,
thank you.
guys. Have a great day.